Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 174 of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. I hope everybody's doing fantastically well. I'm Darren Sawyer, your host, and today we have a fantastic show. My good friend Estelle Coombe-Heath is here.
Hi.
We're going to be chatting all about how food affects your mood and productivity. So everybody who doesn't know Stel is the #1 authority in helping busy women stop binge eating. She's on a mission to help 1 million women have a better relationship with food and their body. Stel is a transformational health and life coach, cognitive behavioral therapist, podcast host, and published author. Her primary focus is helping women with binge and emotional eating, self-esteem, and body image. From a background in business analytics, Stel now leads various programs on changing mindsets around life and eating. She has a vision of a future where women and young girls no longer feel ashamed of their bodies. As a holistic coach, Stel infuses cognitive behavioral therapy, yoga, and emotional resilience into her consultations with clients. Stel's sessions encourage clients to dive into self-transformation through self-actualization. I love it. Stel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Darren.
My pleasure. Now, obviously, we've known each other for a while. I've been following you for quite some time, and I love what you do.
Oh, thank you so much.
But maybe give the audience a little bit more detail into how you fell into this journey and why you're so passionate about this topic.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, like many entrepreneurs, this journey came through a lived experience. I had a disordered relationship with food and my body for over 13 years, which involved into 2 eating disorders, binge eating disorder, orthorexia. I also had body dysmorphia, and obviously on top of that, emotional eating as well. And it was a constant struggle for me because I was successful in my career. Back then, I was still working in IT. I was a health fanatic. So I was really, really excited and enthusiastic about running back then. But I just couldn't understand why I couldn't get my eating right. It felt like there was just this missing piece of the puzzle, which really got my self-esteem down. It's not like my body didn't look like there is no real look for a binge eater, just by the way, but my body didn't look out of shape. So it was this deep secret that I kind of carried within me. And it was just kind of a long and sad journey for me. And eventually, 2018, late November, almost 3 years ago, I actually just decided that it's got nothing to do with food here. I've tried all the food avenues. There has to be something else. Yep. And once I started looking in other areas, that's when I started realizing, wow, there's a lot more here than just discipline and willpower. Yep. I got myself a coach who helped me, who specialized in eating disorders. And eventually she said to me, you know what, you have such a great way. You've got all these amazing tools like yoga and your cognitive behavioral therapy. You should think about helping others with binge eating as well. And I went, no, can't do that.
And lo and behold, here we are.
And here we are 2.5 years later.
Wow. But you know what? It's interesting because, hearing you speak, we're all emotional eaters to some degree, no? I'm emotional. Yes. I'm an emotional eater. I mean, when I'm stressed, I either eat or I don't eat. When I'm happy, I either eat or I don't eat. We're all emotional eaters to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone says to you, I'm not an emotional eater, then ask them if they eat birthday cake, because
absolutely.
Food is just so much part of our culture and our community, and it is very much an emotional thing. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with emotional eating and a little bit of stress eating. The problem is when we become obsessive and we try dangerous self-correcting methods to make up for it.
Yeah, so true. And I suppose there's guilt along the way as well. The guilt that we put on ourselves when after that day of binge eating, God, why did I have to have that extra piece of cake? Or why couldn't I have stopped it? Whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And, unfortunately, that's, when we think about how our minds work, we start with the thoughts like, God, why did I do that? Then we have the emotional response to that, which is guilt, shame, overwhelm. All of a sudden, you have all these emotions that you don't enjoy. Guess what we like doing with those emotions? Distract ourselves with mostly food.
And it's a 360-degree spiral.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, crazy stuff, crazy. But I mean, let's break it down for everybody, just right from the top. Explain to us what food and eating properly really does to our mood and our life and work. How can we? How does it affect us?
Yeah. Okay. So there's two edges of this kind of conversation. The one is that food can affect our mood in a certain extent. If you think about it, if you eat something that is quite delicious, it can bring, quite a nice little feel to it. It can also make you feel rebellious if you constantly think that you shouldn't be eating things. If you keep saying, "Oh, I'm naughty when I eat this," it can actually make you feel rebellious. And then there's also the fact that certain our mood can absolutely affect how our food choices as well, and that's usually it's actually all moods, because we've been conditioned since we were little babies to use food as a soothing tool. So we eat food when we're happy, we eat food when we're sad, with breakups, with celebrations, weddings, all of those things, food is there. So, I think what we've also now got in our current society is this constant pressure of, the latest fad eating plan, or being extremely healthy, and it's become quite fashionable to cut everything out. Absolutely,
so many variations of diets, and it never stops.
And unfortunately, our bodies are built to survive. We have this survival mechanism in the brain called, like, part of the hypothalamus, and that part of the brain is going to keep us alive. So if you start cutting out food, we create this perception of food shortage. That's the same part of the brain that can't see if a tiger is chasing you when we're stressed. It doesn't have eyes, but it responds to this perception that there's scarcity. So when we cut everything out, unfortunately, we are going to feel like we're emotionally eating, or we're eating for reasons of of non-hunger. Most of the time, though, when we do cut everything out, we're eating too little.
Definitely.
And that creates a hormonal imbalance in our bodies, which is our hunger hormone, ghrelin, kind of builds up, and then we can't feel fullness. That's when you can't stop eating, or you have those severe sugar cravings after you've already eaten a meal. So, coming in from a bit of more of a relaxed perspective when it comes to food, that's really going to help us be more perceptive, especially of our emotions, and understanding whether we're actually hungry or just craving something because we haven't allowed ourselves to have it for so long.
And that's one of the worst things for the body, isn't it? To be in that hunger state, because that's when you store everything that you put into your body. Your body thinks it's in starvation mode.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things that happen. So first off, yes, you've got this ghrelin overload. That then creates a peptide in your brain that actually stimulates, it sets off cravings for high energy foods. So you're going to feel like you're constantly thinking about sugary foods or carbohydrate foods, or those fatty foods that you kind of try and avoid. And the reason why it's doing that is because it knows that if I eat that, that's going to give me a quick hit of energy if I need to run away from that perceived tiger or lion. But I can also store a little bit for later. So that process actually slows down your metabolism. The less you eat, there's a lot of controversy over, whether fasting is good for you or not. Unfortunately, if you if you deprive your body of like food, your metabolism will slow down. And that's why people find it harder and harder to maintain their healthy lifestyle with eating and exercise. They just feel like they can't, they doing exercising more and eating less. However, their bodies are not changing in, whether that's wanting to change weight or energy levels, stress levels, those kind of things.
Yep. I mean, I've noticed with myself that when I'm quite a structured eater, and I can eat even very similar things every single day with slight variations. But if I eat very regularly, smaller meals very regularly, or even larger meals very regularly, my whole system works much better than if I didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And most people function like that. There are a few. And this is where I kind of say, we need to feel into what works for our own individual bodies. Sure. But, if we do go those long periods of time, unfortunately, we don't have any energy to think clearly. We lose concentration. You go into that phase, which I like to term hangry. also sometimes
hangry,
known as the fuck it effect, where it's like, excuse my French, but where it's just like, it gets hungry and angry at the same time. But then also when you eat, it's like, well, I don't actually care. Like some people actually feel like their brains just switch off, or they just lose all control. Yep. So, yeah.
Which I mean, listening to you, it kind of brings up the question of preparation and organization. If you're prepared and you're organized ahead of time, you'll have that happen to you less.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I always say to my clients: make sure that you have something in your handbag or in your desk. And at first, when I start working with them, they're like, oh no, I can't keep anything at my desk because I'll just eat it. And I'm like, well, that's just because of that deprivation mentality. Like the more you get used to it being there, and the more you allow yourself to eat more regularly, you'll find that stuff might sit there for a few weeks if you forget about it.
Yeah. Or even just, people that you're going to be, working in a particular area or doing a particular job where you might not be able to go and grab anything. Just bring some lunch, and make it balanced and, make it wholesome, and your body will be much happier for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And your mood.
Your mood as well, and I always, like when I used to travel, the first thing I'd do is I'd go down to the supermarket, whether it's Coles or Woolies, and I'd go see if they have chopped up veggie sticks or, little packs of roasted chickpeas or whatever the case is, something that was convenient, little crackers and cheese, just stuff that I could keep on me that would just keep my body moving. Especially if you know that there's long periods or days where you just, have meetings all day, or, there's just, it can get crazy.
It'll just make your life much more interesting and much more enjoyable. But I mean, we've already kind of given some people some tips, but I really wanted to drill down into, give us some great strategies for better eating. We've covered preparation, we've covered consistency. What else can we do to really make sure we're eating properly for success?
Yeah, so I would say, kind of go back to the eat the rainbow philosophy. Try and find foods, like variations of foods. When we do that, you actually get different nutrients from our fruits and vegetables. Also, the rainbow also includes our carbohydrates, of course, but so vary your eating plan. That adds a lot of variety in the mind as well. You don't get bored with certain things, Darren. You might not have that problem. But for some people, they're like, oh no, I just can't face another salad this week. I've had them all the time. Okay, well, you don't have to eat salad. You can, pick some roast veggies, or get creative on that perspective. So I would say eat the rainbow. Be less restrictive on, what you allow and what you don't. Allow for balance, enjoy that chucky and savor it. I would say don't rush. If you feel like anything is like more unusual, really enjoy it. Another thing that I like to mention to people is we're often so distracted when it comes to eating. and you can be the healthiest eater if you don't chew your food properly, if you're not conscious about what you're eating. It's almost like just opening your stomach and just putting that apple in there. Your stomach goes, well, what am I going to do with this? So chew your food properly, slow down when you eat, and that's really going to just help a lot with your eating side. And when we're satisfied, we get all the nutrients. And we're less reactive, we can think more clearly. So this is where we can become less reactive to stresses or to, bad news or those kind of things. And we can think rationally without reaching for the peanut butter jar or the ice cream tub or whatever the case.
Or the vending machine down the hall.
The vending machine, yeah.
Or the cafe across the road with the beautiful muffins.
Well, I kind of had to adjust all my talks, like to exclude the vending machine over COVID because everyone was working from home.
It's the fridge just 2 centimeters away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what about eating at your desk? What do you say about that?
Oh, yeah, that is something I used to do for so many years. And unfortunately, again, you are multitasking when you eat. You probably not breathing in between bites. And you're also eating under a lot of stress normally because you're trying to get an email out. Yeah. There's very little breathing. Oxygen is really good for digestion, but it also calms the nervous system, which means there's enough blood to digest your food. Whereas if you stress, that blood goes to your limbs so that you can run away. So you are going to feel indigestion. You're probably going to feel like you haven't eaten really anything. You're going to feel like you've missed out because
you're not enjoying it.
Eating is a sensual experience. We look at food, we taste it, we feel the textures, we smell it. And if you're distracted with that, you won't pick that up. And that's when we feel like, oh, I've just eaten that, but I could actually do with another plate because I feel cheated out of this meal.
I feel like I've missed lunch.
Yes.
What happened? The day's gone. And I suppose, adding to what we were talking about before about mood, if you take your food outside and sit at the park bench or sit outside under the sun for 10 minutes and just breathe fresh air and, see the world around you and get some nature, that's probably a good thing as well for your mood.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, especially nature and vitamin D in the sun. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's just going to really help, especially with our stress levels. And awesome.
So it's really just a lot of it's about preparation and pre-thought and being aware, being self-aware enough to make the right choices when you need to make them. Yeah.
And that's where mindfulness comes in. Often mindful eating is just applied to like, oh, okay, I will just mindfully choose something, or I'll mindfully eat one little piece. But there's more mindfulness, like you said, the choices, where we eat, how, our mood when we eat, all helps.
And food is such an important part of culture as well,
Yes.
Meeting people to have lunch, to have a coffee, to dine. It's part of our social activity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, we'll never really get away from that. And if you do, you'll feel like you're missing out.
Yeah. So I suppose the right choices, being smart.
Yes.
Is the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Now, Stel, you've written a book, I believe. You've just written and launched a book. So let's have a look.
Yes. Okay. So that's what it looks like. It felt quite good to have my name on the cover. It's a food and mood journal. I felt, my clients, this is basically the tools that I give my clients on a daily basis. I know there's so much information out there with regards to what to eat and when to eat, but not a lot on just tracking how these two things interrelate. And the people who have bought the book have said, wow, I didn't realize how my mood is some days just completely out there. I didn't actually, because I don't track that, like we don't normally track those kind of things. We ignore that. Yeah. And she's like, I'm shocked. Like even just noticing how I feel has made a difference in me, and I can add in more things to help me with self-care and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really just a way for us to start slowing down. It's not about counting calories. It's really just writing down and see how the food you ate kind of affects your mood, and also how you felt while you ate that food, and how that shows up later in your cravings, your energy, and those kind of things. It's an 8-week kind of food and mood tracker, with a few little affirmations, and just a way to bring some mindfulness to the eating process.
And so, and how long did it take to put that together?
It took quite, I mean, because it's more like a workbook, and most of it is kind of similar. So that didn't take me long, but I think it was more conceptualizing it, and also just, the research into, where people might need a concept like this, or, how that might support people. So that's what took longer. And then also, a little bit of fear of putting something out there. Yep. So I wouldn't say it was that long, probably roughly 2.5 months.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But obviously, the concept and the passion's been with you for years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's a really great, a great thing, because again, it's bringing people back to being aware of what they're doing when they're eating, how they're feeling when they're eating. Self-awareness around that relationship they have with food and their mood is key, as we mentioned. So I think that's exactly what this book is going to help people with. Yeah,
absolutely. And a lot of people have said, wow, just the awareness alone has helped me talk myself off a ledge when it came to a binge, or wow. It's helped me just to see that, wow, I'm actually not drinking any water. Or, so people just realize, oh, okay, there's stuff I didn't really know. And it's more of a relaxed way of tracking food. It's not meant to be regimental and going, oh, I had 10 grains of rice. Yep. I wonder how I'm going to run that off.
That's right. Oh, yes.
That was probably just me, but back in my day.
No, I'm sure it's everybody. Absolutely. And I mean, how do you actually work with people? Do you do one-on-one coaching? Do you do a lot of virtual type programs? Do you do a bit of everything? I'd love for the audience to know a bit more about how they can actually work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my coaching or my programs are all online. So we normally meet on Zoom, and it's just the delivery that kind of changes between, which program the clients come on. I've got a one-on-one program, which is a real deep dive into healing relationship with food, then looking at the emotional factors, and then building habits that last. So, you get a complete overhaul on how you see yourself, how you see food, how you deal with your emotions. And then I have a shorter version, which is a group program, 8 weeks. And that is called the Rewire Your Overeating Brain Mastermind.
Hey, I like it. The Rewire Your Overeating Brain Mastermind.
Yeah, and that has been something I've been focusing on a lot this year. I've found that it's amazing to support people one-on-one, but they still feel quite lonely in the process. And since I've opened up the doors into a more of a group setting, people just feel like, oh gosh, I'm not having to do this journey alone. Yeah. They're like, oh, okay, Stel, I understand that you've done this, but you're on the other side. Whereas now with the group program, they're like, oh, I've got someone here that's holding my hand. We set up accountability buddies. Nice. It becomes almost like a sisterhood. Everyone just supports one another, which is really phenomenal. And I really enjoy that. Yeah. So those are the two main ways. Every now and then I run something called a food zombie challenge, which is kind of currently running.
So tell us about that. What's that? The food zombie challenge?
So I actually, through my years of binge eating, I always felt like I was possessed with food. A lot of my clients said to me that they feel like either they're possessed, or there's a demon or devil sitting on their shoulder, and their brain just switches off. And for me, it always felt like during the throes of a binge, like I was eating like a zombie without remorse, just tearing into food without any consequences. So
just like a mad person.
Yeah, and that's how the food zombie mode was born. And through my work with clients and also my experiences, I came up with different ways the food zombie shows up. So there's anxious Annie, which is a stress eater. There's late night Lizzie, who just can't stop binge eating at night. We have Wagon Wonder, who likes to self-sabotage all the time. We've got possessed Patsy, who thinks about food all the time. And then we've got counting Cassie, who's obsessed with counting calories and making sure that everything is correct. And so basically
the 5 archetypes of the zombie eating.
Yes. So if you would like to, I could actually share a quiz with you, Darren, if you would like to find out your food zombie personality or your binge eating personality.
I'm scared.
I can share that with you. It's just a light-hearted way to kind of understand and relate to some of our behaviors. And so every few months I run a food zombie challenge where I take them through a way to handle each one of the zombies so that you come out at the end with feeling food freedom. So
awesome. And now, do you it seems that you only work with women. Do you work with men as well, or only women?
I have been approached by men. However, like my methods will work with men or women. It's, strangely enough, binge eating disorder is one of the biggest problems now, especially in Australia and also in the US. And, it doesn't really have a specific gender that it targets. It can target anyone. And the pandemic, what that's taught us is, a lot of people started looking for comfort with food and those kind of things. So usually my marketing is aimed towards women, just because I can relate from that perspective, but my methods will work for both.
I'm sure they will. I mean, and fascinating enough, like you mentioned, the lockdown, etc. Have you noticed any, or have you learnt anything, or had any real aha moments about people's relationship with food through the lockdown and now post-lockdown? Have you any insights that you can share with us that really were aha moments for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of felt like the pantry was calling their name, or all of a sudden they just had this problem with snacks in the pantry, that kind of thing. And, one thing that I normally mention is like that problem was probably already there. Mm-hmm. But you were at work all the time, so you only noticed that on the weekends. Exactly. So things don't just happen all of a sudden, is one scenario, but also because we're thrown into a pandemic, there's fears of what's going to happen. Is the apocalypse coming?
Stress. Yep.
Then we had a real perceived food shortage when we had all that panic buying. So all of a sudden, there is now a panic about food that adds a lot of stress and cortisol to us, whether we've had food issues or not. Yep. Like, I don't know about you, Darren, but like a few weeks when I went shopping, a few weeks into lockdown, that first one, my heart just sank, and I actually came home shaking because, just of my history. And I've always now try and tell myself that there's plenty of food, I'll never go hungry. Yeah. And that was really, really scary. And
I do remember. I remember like rummaging around trying to find, where can I buy chicken breast? Which supermarket has chicken breast this morning? Because a lot of them were out of stock.
Yeah, or like people fighting over the last can of corn. Yeah. And you're like, wow, this is just
and we won't go to the toilet paper. That's like that's the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, so that alone can add a lot of stress to people's eating habits. That perceived people who've never had food issues might now have a perceived shortage in the survival mind. Yeah. But we also, having to adjust to the lifestyles we have, like that added a lot of stress. Like any change is stressful. If you think about it, if you move house, that's rated one of the number one stresses in the world. And usually it's supposed to be one of the most exciting things, right? But it's change. All of a sudden you have to find a new route to work. All of a sudden you need to find a new gym, or a new friendship group if you're moving very far away from everything. So you uprooted. And the same with what happened during COVID, everyone now has to adjust to a new lifestyle, uprooted from their office environment. Most of them, I'm not a parent, but most of them now have to take on new roles, which they have, kind of, not like they didn't have time, but they still had a full-time job. Now you have to do schooling as well.
Yeah, so there's more added stress in your day as well to organize and so less time to eat properly.
Less time to organize and less me time.
Yep.
And that's kind of what's like, the pandemic really stressed the stress that we need that time for ourselves, that time, whether it's 5 minutes or, if you can afford, now that the salons are open and everything else, if you can treat yourself to just some time where you don't have to talk to anyone, or, you can just be with a close friend having your nails done, or sitting outside in the sun. That's important whether we have a pandemic or not. Like, we just need to make sure that we support ourselves in this highly stressed world. Yeah.
So and a really good point you made. I mean, because I think we're going to be now moving into a hybrid style work environment where we'll be sometimes working from home and sometimes working from the office. We need to be more mindful about our relationship with food and the fridge and the pantry, because we will be working from home more often.
I actually saw a friend of mine put up it was kind of like a joke, but it wasn't, it was her reality. She went back to the office and now people are labeling their lunch, which never used to happen. But I think what's happened is everyone's like, well, this is mine. I need to just make sure that everyone knows that this food is mine. But you're right. We're going to have to be more prepared now. It's not just like you can walk over to the fridge and get your lunch. You're going to have to make sure that you pack your lunch on the days where you are at the office or on the road. A lot of people are out back repping, that kind of thing. Make sure that you keep hydrated, and make sure that you eat your breakfast in time before you leave for work, so that you're not ravenous by the time you get to the office.
It's just fascinating. It just goes to show you how important food is in our lives. In our every daily activity, food is there. It's just fascinating.
Well, it's one of our 3 staple survival things, right? We've got oxygen, which you can't live without for a few minutes. We've got water, 1 or 2 days, and then there's food, which is probably like a week, and that's it. So, yeah.
Important.
Very important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Stel, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'd love you to tell everybody how they can find you if they want to.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. So as you mentioned before, Darren helped me actually to set up my own podcast exactly almost a year ago. I think the 18th of November was the day I actually launched my podcast. So
and it's a fantastic podcast as well, of course.
Yeah, so that is called Beyond Overeating by Wholesome Lifestyle Project. So you're welcome to come and hang over there. I'm also on Instagram a lot. Wholesome Lifestyle Project is my handle. And also Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Food Freedom for Binge and Emotional Eaters. So you're welcome to join that as well.
Fantastic. And of course, you've got a website, I'm sure.
I have my website, wholesomelifestyleproject.com. And if you're looking for the links if you're not from Australia, I've got on there, if you just look for shop, I've got all the links for all the countries for the Freedom Mood Journal on there as well.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. And what I'll do is I'll put all those notes, all those links in the show notes for everybody so they can access all those things. And that includes obviously the book. And
thank you.
and the podcast, absolutely, which is fantastic. But Stel, it's been an absolute pleasure. I always like to give my guests the last word. So anything that you want to, leave us with today about food or mood or emotional eating?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, emotional eating is, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you if you emotionally eat. It's, something that we can work with. And it's usually just a symptom of something else going on. And once we start understanding and we're open to support ourselves with that notion, then we're able to kind of move forward with emotional eating, get the help that we need, and don't let it bother you like all the time.
So true. Love it. And everybody out there, Estelle is a wealth of knowledge in this area. So get in touch with her, listen to her podcast, buy a book, check out all the content that she has, because she's really a fantastic source of material and inspiration to get you on the right track with your eating. So thank you so much for being on the show, Estelle. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Darren.
Thank you so much for coming on. And for all the listeners out there, just a quick, big shout out. Thanks, guys, for all your support. We're nearly getting to episode 175, so we're climbing. So I'd just love to ask anybody who hasn't yet, would love any reviews on Google or on wherever you can find the podcast or YouTube. And any all your support is always welcome. So thanks again, Stel. That's episode 174, and we'll be back very, very soon for 175 of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. Bye for now.
Bye.